So, hello everyone. Yesterday we have worked with .ignore, which is you can say it's get ignore for Docker. So today we'll see about Docker Compose by using both the containers, that is our own fast API container along with the PostgreSQL container, right? So before getting started, let's see what a Docker Compose does, or what Docker Compose actually is. So when you'll work in startup or when you'll work in another company, you'll work with multiple containers or multiple images, not just a single image, right? And there might come a time where you want to run multiple images on a same time, right? So at that time what you'll do, you'll manually run each and every images? No, for that you'll need a Docker Compose, right? So uh, let's say that Docker Compose lets us run multiple containers together using one file and one command. So instead of running two separate containers by using two different methods or two different commands, we use a single Docker Compose command, right? So in the current video we're going to work on the fast API plus PostgreSQL, where the containers could talk to each other, and basically this single command would run the two containers at the same time. So let's see our project structure. So in today's video we're going to create a small project where I'll going to demonstrate you about Docker Compose. So here we're going to put this 5 files inside a project, right? So let's head to the terminal and let's try to create one project. So let's make a directory name fast API compose, and let's check whether it's created or not. And here you can see it's created, so let me just go inside that directory. As you can see, I'm inside the fast API compose. Now here I want to make you can say 5 files, so I'll quickly make them by using the command let's create main.py. I'll require main.py, then requirements dot txt. I'll need it. I'll also need a Docker file, then I'll need Docker ignore, and I'll need Docker compose dot yml. I'll explain you each and every structure. So now let's check whether all the files are created or not that we want. So we want main.py, requirement.py, Docker file, then Docker compose. Um, did it created Docker ignore? Um, let me just create uh, Docker ignore, and now okay. So let me open the VS Code over here, and let's wait for few seconds so that it would open. And let me open the correct sorry let me open the correct folder that we want. Just a second. So here I created fast API and this fast API compose folder. Let me select it and we'll wait till it opens. So here you can see our Docker ignore, Docker compose, .yml, Docker file, everything are basically opened, right? So I'll simply do one thing. I'll quickly write code for main.py. It will be same as the code that we have wrote in part 2 or 3. So let me quickly write from fastAPI import fastAPI. I'll quickly write this fast API, and I'll simply write one simple API over here that will return just a second, that will basically return message which will be hello from Docker compose. Right, you don't need to pay attention uh, for this as of now. Alright, and just a second, let me cross check it once. uh, it should be this fast API. Alright, now let me simply add this root function and this. Now we are ready. I have a written main.py code. Now I'll need to write requirement.txt. We need fast API and UVCon for this, right? Now let's write a Docker file. So I need this version, that is from will need python python 3.10 slim work dir will be, I'll write this. Now we'll copy requirements dot txt to the working directory and we'll run pip install no cache dir, this r flag, right? Requirements dot txt. After that you'll need to copy all the contents from this folder to the working directory. Also need to expose the port 8000. This is for documentation purpose. Now I'll need to write a command which will be uvcorn. I'll write uvcorn main colon app. Then you will need this flag, that is host. You will need this 0.0.0.0 so that it would be open for all network interfaces, and this for port. The port which will be using is 8000, right? So we have written the Docker file as well. Now I'll need to write a Docker I need to write a Docker ignore for Docker basically. So what I'll do, I'll simply ignore I'll ignore Docker file, and I'll ignore Docker ignore and Docker compose dot YML as well, right? And after that we are all set. But what will be inside this Docker compose dot YML? So let me take you back to this note screen. So we have created this Docker compose YML. and inside this we will going to write this code, which will be this version, services and all. Let me explain you everything step by step. So the first line is going to be version 3.9, which is the version of uh, it's not the version of Docker, not Docker ignore, not Python, anything. It's basically version of Docker compose file format version. It basically tells Docker how to interpret the docker compose.yml syntax, right? So it's basically a standard version that currently been used. So that's the reason why we have written a version 3.9, right? Now the services, now each services is equals to one container. So as we are working for two containers, so that's the reason here we have written two services, which is API service and database service, right? So inside the API service will so this is the name of one container, which will be our fast API file, right? Which will be run as background job, right? So here we are written build colon dot. It basically means that it will use the docker file to build the custom image. Means it will use this docker file to build the custom image, right? Now here it will use the container name as fast API app. Here it will do the port mapping that we have done in part 2 or 3, where this is the host port and this is the container port, basically mapping the ports, right? This basically means that it depends on db. Db basically means this name of the another container which we are using, that's PostgreSQL, right? So it basically means that it depends on, basically means that start database container before the API container, right? So it basically means that as this container is dependent on database container, first you need to run this container and after that you need to run this container. But the reason but what it does, it depends on only means that start database container first. It does not mean that wait until the Postgres is ready to accept the conditions, or sorry, connections. What it means that you should first start with Postgres and after that I'll run. Whether the Postgres is ready to accept or accept the connections or not, it doesn't care. It will run the fast API container, right? So it depends on, basically means that, which is first run the database container and after and immediately run the fast API container. Don't wait for it to accept the connections. Okay, so what if our fast API backend depend on the Postgres? So at that time we'll basically use some of the rules like wait for it until the until the Postgres accepts the connections and all. That's the further part of the production level setup. But currently we are just taking the example. That's the reason why we have not gone further, like writing rules or that, right? We'll talk about it in future videos, right? So currently just keep that thing in mind, that it basically starts before, like basically um, it means that start database container first, right? After that this is the environment, which is a database URL. This is all the URL of it. Now the main thing that you should know about the environment. What is environment? So basically this is how the containers talk with each other. So basically the fast API server talks with the Postgres container, and this is how the containers talk with each other when we use Docker Compose. So basically remember this thing, that db is the name of the server. Docker creates internal DNS. So basically this is a db colon 3432. So db is basically the internal DNS created by Docker itself, right? And container resolve DB automatically. So remember one thing, that here is the note that each container has its own local database. So each container has their own local host. Docker Compose gives them a shared network plus DNS. So here you can say that Docker creates a virtual private network for both the containers to communicate with each other. And here service name means this DB is actually the host name of the container. Means this DB knows the IP address, or is mapped with the IP address of this container, and that's the reason why we have written this DB colon 5432. So it goes to the IP address of this container and it establishes the communications between these two containers, and that's how the two containers communicate with each other. I hope it makes sense to you all, right? So this was about the first service. Another service is basically of a Postgres image. So here we have use image, that is Postgres colon 15. So basically we are using official Postgres image, which is pre-built on Docker Hub, and from there we are using it. Name of the container will be Postgres database. Here we are set up in the environment where the username, password, name of the database and all these things, and here we are just mapping the ports together. I hope this all the Docker Compose .yml has made enough sense to you all. Now let's get back to our VS Code and let's write the code inside the Docker Compose YML, right? So first will be a version which is 3.9, which is the standard version. Then services. So services, name of the service will be API, and inside the API the build will be this, as it takes the Docker file to build the image. Container name will basically be fast API app, right? Ports mapping will be 8000 and 8000, right? And it basically depends on, basically means that run the database container first, right? And environment will be database URL. So that this is how they communicate with each other. So let me simply copy this URL, copy, and I'll paste it over here, right? So this is for first service. Now let's write code for database DB. Image name will be Postgres 15. Container name will be Postgres DB, right? And environment will be the Postgres user and all. Let me simply copy it. Just a second, copy, and let me paste it over here. Let me align it, okay? And after that we'll need to give ports which will be 5432. This is the standard port for a database, if you know, right? So here we completed the docker compose.yml file as well. We have saved the code. Let's check all the files once. Here we want to ignore this. Then docker compose, we have written this. Here we have the docker file ready. This is main.py. This is requirements.txt. Right, now let's get back to the node screen, and now we need to run everything, and let's check whether everything is correct or not, and we haven't made any kind of mistakes. So let me run the command, and the command is going to be docker compose up build. Now basically this basically means that build the fast API container as well. So let me hit enter, and here you can say unknown flag. Okay, it says that it's an unknown flag. Okay, so is it like docker compose up build? Docker compose up build. Okay. It says that it's an unknown flag. Okay, so I'll simply docker compose up build. It says that it's not a command, but it should work. We need to run this, that is docker compose up build, but I don't know why it's not running. Docker let me simply check the files. So docker images, there is nothing. So docker compose up it says that a compose up is not command of docker, and it should not be like that. Okay, so as docker compose was not working, I made few changes. So here I made a repository directory for docker plugins. I downloaded the docker compose from the github by using this curl command, and I have made it executable, and now here we can see the version of docker compose, right? So if you are getting same error, then just follow these steps. Now let's run our um, let's compose up our task. So let me click on enter, and here you can see that it's basically building up, right? So let's wait for a couple of seconds, and here you can see all the tasks are going on, and once it's completed, we'll check on browser whether the things are correctly working or not. Alright, So just wait for a couple of um, minutes and it will be completed, and after that we'll open browser and check. So here you can see that local build definition from Docker and all this thing. uh, this fast API compose default, all the container was created and all, right? And basically you can ignore this error as of now. This is because I have already downloaded PostgreSQL, and the port is currently being used. So that's the reason it has given the error. So you can simply ignore it. Now let's go to this browser and let's type localhost and 8000. Um, uh, Response from daemon. Should we check Docker images? Mm. So what's the problem? It says it's unable to connect. Load. Docker ignore. Build context, copy requirements, .txt, exporting to images, naming to Docker IO. Okay. Attaching to fastAPI app PostgreSQL. So what if we change the addresses? I think that will make sense, right? Mm. Now let's rebuild it again. Okay, so here it is running, I guess. Now let's get back to the image, and yeah, there you go. So here you can see the message hello from Docker Compose, and yeah, our code basically worked, right? Right? So here you can correctly check the log that we have hit the endpoint, and here it's giving us hello from Docker Compose, right? So this was all for today's video. So let me give you a brief revision to what we did. So uh, first, let's consider this important note, that is each container has its own local host. Docker Compose creates a virtual private network. and inside that network Docker provides internal DNS where the service name acts as host name, allowing containers to communicate with each other, right? And so this was all about Docker Compose. And let's just execute this, that is stop everything. So if I simply click on this, it is stopped basically, right? I simply pressed Control plus C, right? So this was all for today's video. Do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in next video. Till then, happy coding.